I introduced last week when we started with Genesis chapter 2 and the creation of the first humans that we'll spend the month of September working our way through the beginning of the Old Testament. Am I forgetting something? No, the sermon got left out of the bulletin. But I'm going to preach anyway. It's there? It's not. Oh, well, okay. Half of you can listen and the other half can go, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, okay. So I announced last week that for these first 5 weeks or so, the first 5 Sundays in September, we're going to be reading through some stories in the early part of the Old Testament. We're going to think through the lens of names. What do names mean in the Bible? What do the names tell us about the characters in the Bible? What do they tell us about God? And so today's story is about, as you've heard already, Abraham and Sarah and their son Isaac. And so I've imagined today's sermon as a conversation between the young boy Isaac. Maybe you've had a child that was 4 or 5 or 6 years old and asks you about their name. Why do I have this name, or what does my name mean? So I've imagined this sermon as a conversation between the young boy Isaac and his mother Sarah. So I'm going to play both parts, and hopefully you can sort of figure out, mostly it's going to be Sarah talking. Mama, what does Isaac mean? Isaac means he laughs. Why did you name me Isaac, Mama? Did I laugh when I was born? No, darling. You did not laugh. Like every new baby, you cried at the top of your lungs. And cried. And cried. Did you laugh, Mama? Did I laugh? Let me tell you a story, Isaac. One day, before you were even in my belly, some men were passing by our home. Your father, being the compassionate man that he is, he insisted that these travelers come in to rest and eat. The desert can be a harsh place, you know. We have to look out for one another. Anyway, Avi came running inside asking for bread and water. Now the water I could give him, but we had eaten the last of the bread that morning. He should have known that. More would have to be baked. So I went about baking fresh bread. Nothing's better than bread hot out of the oven anyway. But when our servant showed up and asked for a knife to butcher the calf, I wondered about these travelers. This was extravagant hospitality. Why, I wondered. I worked in the kitchen, but I kept my ear turned toward the door, and I listened hard through the wall of the tent to hear what your father and these strangers were discussing. I could only pick up a few sentences here and there, but I heard this as clear as day. I will surely return to you in due season, and your wife Sarah shall have a son. I laughed, Isaac. But it wasn't the kind of laugh that you laugh when someone tells a funny joke. You know already that I am older than most of your friends' mothers. I was old then too. My body had failed me. Your father's body had failed him. We both worried that we had failed one another. We wondered if we had failed God. Don't get me wrong, I knew God's promise. As hard as it was, I was glad Avi would have Ishmael to carry on his name and live out the covenant. But my time was past, Isaac. I had nothing left to give. And I had long stopped hoping that anything else could be true. So I laughed. Not very loud, just sort of a chuckle to myself. I almost cried. I wasn't just laughing to myself. I was laughing at myself, deriding my messed up insides for failing to give my husband the heir that God had promised. What a ridiculous promise. What a ridiculous God. It was a broken-hearted laugh, a cynical, hopeless laugh, full of shame and sorrow. But broken-hearted laughter wouldn't be a very good name for a boy. That hopeless laugh would not be my last laugh, dear Isaac. It wasn't long after that day when I began to see, to feel in my belly just how narrow my world had become. All I had seen for years was failure and sorrow. But God was doing the impossible. Despite my brokenheartedness, despite my cynicism, despite my weak faith. It's hard to explain, really. There's nothing reasonable or scientific about it. It doesn't make sense. I didn't really even believe it. But God was doing it. And soon other people could see it too. Could see that you were growing in my womb. I stopped laughing at myself, Isaac. And other people stopped laughing at me. God brought laughter, real laughter, joyful laughter for me. And everyone who felt your tiny kicks and who heard your baby's wails, they laughed with me too. We learned, Isaac, baby laughter. We learned that nothing is impossible with God. But listen, Isaac, your name does not mean that God's people will only and always laugh a joyful laugh. Your name will always hold two stories, Isaac. The story of a hopeless, shameful laugh. The story of my pain. That story will always stand along that joyful laugh of the whole community. The story of God's unbelievable power. So don't forget that, dear Isaac. Your name means laughter. The kind of laughter that only God can give. But it also means the struggle that it takes to learn to laugh again. What about your name? What does your name mean to you? In your pew, you will find a few blank index cards. I think they're on the end. I invite you to pass them out. If there are more people in your pew than 4, you probably need to grab some from another pew. Kids, do this too. So take me one of these cards and find a pencil, maybe in the black folder, or borrow a pen from your neighbor who has a purse full of those kinds of things. And I invite you to write your name on the card. You can write your full name, your first name, your favorite nickname. Oh, I didn't get any for the choir. We got some for the choir. Hold on. That's my fault. I think there's enough here. Not if you want. So write your name on that card. Again, it could be your whole name, a nickname, whatever name you want to write. Is that enough for the choir? Okay. And I want to invite you to just spend maybe 2 minutes in silent reflection, thinking about a story related to your name. A good story, a hard story, a funny story, it doesn't matter. You heard last week, if you were here, a story about my name, why I go by Heather, my first name, instead of my middle name. So think of a story about your name and perhaps maybe what that name says about who you are. Spend just 2 minutes for you to think about that. You don't have to write the story on the card, just write your name on the card. To invite you to find a partner, preferably someone who's not your spouse, and swap cards and share a story about your name. And I want you to just hold this as a sacred experience. When we hear someone's name and a story behind it, we're hearing something of their origin, their tribe, their ancestors, maybe a story of healing, of determination. Stories of God's power. So as we share as you find a partner and swap cards, I invite you to listen just deeply and intently as your partner shares a story of his name or her name. And after they share, take just 30 seconds to jot down what you heard on the card so that you can remember it for later. So go ahead, find a partner. Share your name story. I hope everybody had a little chance to go both directions, to hear the story of somebody's names and the stories that go with it. I want to invite you to keep your partner's name card. So if you gave it back, switch again. So you take the name of your partner home with you. Everybody got that? Take the name of your partner home with you. I invite you in the week to come to pray for this person, to reflect on the story that they have told you about their name and what it teaches you about them. If you have a place in your house where you place prayer intentions, maybe you put them on your bathroom mirror so you see them in the morning. Maybe you have a place where you light a candle, a place where you sit and read scripture. Put this in a place where you will remember to pray for your partner. Intentionally reflecting on each other's names, it allows us to hold the story and the person behind it as someone who is worthy of respect as a person in whom God is present and active, whose story has a place in God's story. And I hope you know that, whatever your name is, that your story has a place in God's story. I also invite you to remember that those stories, they belong to the person who told them to you. So even if it seems like it's a story that might not be in any way embarrassing or anything, always ask permission before sharing someone else's story. It's a way of honoring that person, that it's their story and not yours. So as you pray for them, as you hold them this week, think about how you honor their story. And in the week ahead, may you know that your name is written as it's promised in Isaiah on the palm of God's hand. May you know the kind of laughter that only God can give. And may you also honor the struggle that it has taken for all of us, that it takes for all of us to learn how to laugh again after pain. May it be so for you. Amen.